Have you ever opened your mailbox, seen an envelope from the IRS, and immediately felt your stomach drop? Maybe your first thoughts was, what did I do wrong? Maybe your thoughts were, I cannot afford whatever they're asking for. Or maybe you didn't open the letter at all. If you've ever received IRS notices, you are not alone. Every year, the IRS sends millions of notices to taxpayers across the country. Some notices are fairly simple. Some notices require action. Some notices involves money. Others simply provide information. The problem is that many taxpayers don't understand the difference. As a result, they either panic unnecessarily or they ignore a notice that actually requires attention. Neither response is helpful. Today, we're going to discuss what the IRS notices are, what the IRS, why the IRS sends them, what information you should look for, the biggest mistakes taxpayers make, and what steps you should take before responding. My name is Shane Harris. I am an enrolled agent with Profit First Taxes, and I help taxpayers understand and resolve IRS problems. If you found this video helpful, make sure you subscribe because every week I'll be sharing information about IRS notices, tax debts, collections, audits, penalties, and tax resolution strategies. Now let's get started. Let's start with the first thing every taxpayer should understand. Receiving an IRS notice doesn't automatically mean that you're in trouble. One of the biggest misconceptions taxpayers have is that every IRS letter means something terrible has happened. That simply isn't true. The IRS sends notices for many different reasons. Some notices are informational, some confirm that a payment was received. Some notify you of changes to your account. Some request additional information. Some involve balances due. And yes, some are more serious than others. But before you panic, remember this. Receiving an IRS notice is not the same thing as being audited. Receiving an IRS notice is not the same thing as having your wages garnished. Receiving an IRS notice is not the same thing as having your bank accounts levied. The first step is understanding what type of notice you actually received. You can't determine severity of the situation based solely on the fact that the IRS mailed you something. Now, let's discuss why the IRS sends notices. The IRS sends notices for a variety of reasons. One common reason is that a balance is due. Perhaps you filed a return showing taxes owed, but you haven't paid it as yet. Another common reason is that the IRS believes that there is information missing from your return. Maybe income reported by a third party doesn't match what was reported on your return. Sometimes the IRS has notices because they adjusted something on your account. Other notices may involve unfiled returns, missing payments, estimated tax issues, identity verification, collections activity, and audit requests. This is why reading the notice carefully is critical. The notice itself often tells you exactly why the IRS is contacting you. Now, let's discuss the first thing you should do when you receive a notice. Open the letter. This sounds simple, right? But you'd be surprised how many taxpayers avoid opening IRS mail. I've seen people leave notices unopened for weeks, sometimes months, occasionally even a lot longer than that. Why, you ask? Because they're afraid. They assume the absolute worst. They believe that if they don't look at the problem, somehow it won't be real. Unfortunately, that's not how the IRS notice works. Ignoring the letter doesn't stop the deadlines. Ignoring the letter doesn't stop the penalties. Ignoring the letter does not stop collection activity. The first thing you should do is open the notice and read it completely. You don't have to solve the problem immediately, but you do need to understand what the IRS is saying. Now, let's discuss what information to look for. When reading an IRS notice, there are several things you should identify. First, look for the notice number. The notice number helps identify what type of letter you'll be receiving. Second, identify the tax year involved. Many taxpayers receive notices involving prior years and don't immediately realize it. Third, determine whether the IRS is requesting action. Is the IRS asking you to respond, provide documentation, make a payment, file a return? Fourth, review any deadlines. Deadlines matter. Missing a deadline can sometimes limit your options. And finally, determine whether the IRS is proposing a change or simply providing information. Not every notice requires the same response. Understanding the purpose of the notice is critical. Now, let's discuss one of the biggest mistakes taxpayers make: assuming the IRS is always correct. This surprises some people. The IRS processes millions of tax returns and documents every single year. Most of the times, things work out correctly, but mistakes can happen. Documents are misapplied. Documents can be misapplied. Information can be missing. Records can be incomplete. This doesn't mean every IRS notice is wrong. It simply means you should review the information carefully before automatically agreeing with what it states. For example, the IRS may believe income wasn't reported, but perhaps the income was already included on the return. The IRS may believe a payment wasn't received, but perhaps the payment was applied incorrectly. The point is simple: read the notice, review the facts, then determine the appropriate response. Now, let's discuss the opposite mistake. Don't automatically assume the IRS is wrong. Some taxpayers have the opposite reaction. They immediately assume the IRS made a mistake. They can't be right. This cannot be my issue. Sometimes that's absolutely true. And sometimes it isn't. The best approach is neither panic nor denial. The best approach is investigation. Review the notice, compare it to your records, understand what the IRS is saying, and then determine whether additional information is going to be needed. Approaching the situation calmly usually leads to a better outcome. Now, let's discuss what happened when notices are ignored. This depends on the type of notice. But generally speaking, ignoring IRS notices tend to make situations worse rather than better. Additional notices may be issued. Penalties may increase. Interest may continue to accrue. Collections activity eventually begin. The IRS generally doesn't assume you didn't receive the notice. The IRS generally assumes the notice was delivered. This is why it is important to address notices as early as possible. The sooner you understand the issue, the more options you typically have. Let's talk about when professional help may be appropriate. When should you seek professional help? Not every IRS notice requires professional representation. Some notices are pretty straightforward. Others are a little bit more complicated. You may want to seek assistance if the notice involves these things: multiple tax years, large balances due, audits, collection activity, wage garnishments, revenue officers, unfiled returns, or complex tax issues. The goal isn't necessarily to hire someone immediately. The goal is to understand your options before making important decisions. Sometimes a short consultation can provide clarity and direction. Before we wrap up, let's review the biggest mistakes taxpayers make. Number one, not opening the letter. Number two, ignoring the deadlines. Number three, assuming the IRS is always correct. Number four is the opposite, assuming the IRS is always wrong. And number five, waiting entirely too long to address the issue. Notice that most of these mistakes occur before the taxpayer even understand what the notice is even saying. That is why education is so important, and that's why I am here. And final thoughts: receiving an IRS notice can be stressful, I would admit that. But stress often comes from uncertainty. The more you understand what the notices say, the better prepared you'll be to respond appropriately. Remember, open the notice, read the notice, understand the notice. Don't panic, don't ignore, and don't assume the worst before reviewing the facts. Before I let you go, remember this: the problem rarely improves by themselves, but many can be resolved when addressed properly. If you're dealing with IRS notices, unfiled returns, wage garnishments, tax debts, and any other IRS issues, schedule a consultation with Profit First Taxes. The link is in the description below. Even if you aren't ready to hire someone today, subscribe to the channel. Every week, I'll be sharing information to help you understand your options and avoid costly mistakes with the IRS. If you found this video helpful, please like the video and share it with someone who may need it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.